Joining me now is retired U.S. Army Green Beret and demolition expert Ryan Hendrickson, who survived a near-fatal injury while serving in Afghanistan in 2010. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for your service. Now, Ryan, can you talk to us through what Special Ground Forces might do if they would try to take Kharg Island, Iran's primary oil terminal, handling nearly 90% of its crude oil?
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you very much. Um, yeah, as far as putting boots on the ground in Kharg Island or anything like that, you have to look at geography on it, and it's between 18 and 20 miles off the main coast of Iran. Kharg Island is extremely strategic for the Iranians because it's their deep sea port. It's shallow water on the coastline of Iran, so they can't get oil tankers in there to put them up with the oil exports and then onward, which includes the Straits of Hormuz. With that being said, when you're looking at Kharg Island, about 20 square miles, so I think it's 3 by 5. Um, if you look in history a little bit, which you always got to go back to history, there's another island that's 20.6 square miles, and that is Iwo Jima. And there was 7,000 U.S. service members killed on Iwo Jima, and they're roughly about the same size. And so people may say, well, that was in the 40s. Technology has come so far, but technology works both ways. And one thing that needs to be remembered is the enemy has a boat as well. And so now artillery capabilities are well over 20 miles. Ballistic capabilities, Iran has the capabilities to launch ballistics over 2,000 miles, some reports of 4,000 miles. Um, there's just a lot. Shahed drones, definitely in Shahed drone range. And so when you're secluded on an island and you're holding that ground, that opens you up for massive attacks. Not to mention all ground forces or boots on the ground, they have to be resupplied unless you have 100% control of the skies and the seas. Then you can't. Then you're always going to be running a risk trying to resupply these ground forces. Another thing a lot of people probably don't understand is the use of landmines in Iran. So if you go back to the Iran-Iraq war, landmines were huge, and the Iranians are a big manufacturer of military landmines, from their anti-personnel mines to Lipit sea mines to anti-vehicle mines. They're a major manufacturer of it, and if you don't think that there are defensive mine belts that are waiting for a force, ground troops, then you just got to go back in history just a little bit to look, and it can happen. It's the same thing that in Ukraine, the war between Ukraine and Russia, landmines are a huge use there, and in my opinion, it is the number one deciding factor on the battlefield because troops and mechanized units they don't have freedom of movement because of landmines. And we can find ourselves in that same situation pretty quickly, a situation we haven't seen since the first Gulf War.
Now, we do hear from the administration, including President Trump, a lot of times they don't want to give out any type of military moves that they are looking at. But we did hear the president say that if the Strait of Hormuz is not open, then they will completely obliterate Kharg Island. Could that calculation potentially be that there are a lot of landmines on the island? Or could you just share your thoughts on that situation?
So all I can do is go off of what I would do and personal experience, and a lot of missions that you plan, especially in special forces, you look for the enemies most likely in the most dangerous avenues of approach, or what they can do to you. And in my opinion, what I would do if I was in the Iranian seat is I would completely mine everything, because that limits freedom of movement. And if I can limit your freedom of movement, then I can strike you where I want to strike you. Even though Kharg Island, again, very small island, it wouldn't be hard for the Iranians to also do counter battery and to quote unquote obliterate the island as well with U.S. forces on. And now, if you don't control the air, um, then if you don't have air superiority, then you could be looking at a really big mess, especially when you're trying to get medevac in, when you're trying to get resupply in, and everything else that troops are going to need on the ground. So um, it's extremely risky because there's nowhere to go.
Mm.
You're on an island and you're within 20 miles of Iranian proper or mainland, and that opens you up for a whole variety of small range, medium range, long range capabilities that the Iranians have proven that they do have and continue to have, because as we watch the news, they're still striking Gulf region countries and stuff like that. So they have those capabilities. If I was the Iranians, I would be watching the news. I would be paying attention to what we're saying, and I would have a lot of assets pointed at Kharg Island.
Now, you nearly
But
lost your life in 2010. You were blown up by an IED. Can you just talk a little bit about the risk that troops face through all of this for our viewers?
yeah, absolutely. 2010, I stepped on an IED, nearly took my life, and that's a very real risk that U.S. forces are going to face. The problem is we haven't faced it on a scale that we could see with Iran. So we were fighting an insurgency. This is going to be a near peer war, and so again, I have to go back to Ukraine, Russia, because I work in Ukraine. We do humanitarian demining in Ukraine. I have to look at the use of landmines in Ukraine and how that this conflict can easily revolve into what the Ukrainians and the Russians are both facing with landmines. And we haven't seen this on this scale since maybe the Gulf War, but thankfully there was this sandstorm that blew through and it uncovered miles of mine belt that the Iraqis had placed for us at the border, and it just it was Mother Nature that was able to uncover a lot of those mine belts. But
Mm.
in Iran, they are a manufacturer of a lot of military landmines, and so if you don't think that they're going to use landmines, because landmines have been shown to be an equalizer throughout the world. If you look at what the Taliban, Al Qaeda, ISIS, what they've been able to do to major militaries, I've been able to stall you because of the threat of what's buried underneath the ground. If you look at Ukraine and Russia, it's basically a stalemate, and a lot of that, in my humble opinion, is because of landmines. There is no ground freedom of movement for mechanized forces to be able to do whatever they want. The same thing can happen very, very quickly in Iran. And if we don't think the Iranians have defensive mine belts up, I would just say go back and look in history a little bit and do a little research on the Iran-Iraq war, because I would say that they do, and I would
Mm.
say that if we are not prepared for that or have the capabilities for that, we could be taking a lot of casualties due to landmines. And then also, once you're stalled out, now you're opened up for shaheds, artillery, ballistics, and everything else. So
Mm.
it could get really messy really fast. And um, you just have to look, is, I guess the old saying is, the juice worth the squeeze. Well, in this case, is American lives worth the results we're going to get from occupying Kharg Island or boots on Iranian mainland?
Mm.
I don't know.
Ryan Hendrickson, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much.
I really appreciate it. Thank you, guys.